Alright, peeps, welcome to another video, this one about sentence level stress. And I know some of you have requested this, and I haven't posted in a long time, but here it is. And actually this is going to be the first part out of several parts about sentence level stress, since there's a lot to cover. So this video is going to be more of an overview, mainly about emphasizing words, deliberate speech, and different prosodic registers. I'll give you some examples as well, and in another video I'll do a deeper dive into some of the examples. And for another video I will go over some specific parts of speech and how they should be treated in terms of sentence level stress. Like, could you stress them? And if so, what are the implications semantically of stressing it versus not stressing it? So in this video, we're going to look at prosodic registers first. The reason I'm doing this is just to show you that stressed and de-stressed as concepts for like the two ways you can pronounce a tone, it's not so black and white. It's more of a spectrum. So what I call de-stressed, that is, I would say, like, you know, the baseline for like most of the words that someone would say in casual speech. Most of them are de-stressed. Like, even if in isolation a word would have, like, let's say, you know, both syllables stressed, or maybe just the first syllable stressed, you know, or whatever. In casual speech, everything just kind of gets de-stressed, except for words you want to emphasize. So the emphasis part, if you go to the top of that list of prosodic registers, the emphasis register, you'll have a few words jump into that range, but for most of the time, like, you'll be, in casual speech, everything will be de-stressed. And there's actually some personal variation. So some people will sound even more monotone, and even for the de-stressed tone contours, which I did explain in my first video on this topic, like, some people won't even distinguish those tones that much, so they sound more monotone. And some people are naturally more deliberate, and deliberate, that could also be like you could also be more of a casual speaker, but for some words, you're thinking more, you're putting more concentration and effort and focus into what you're saying. So those words they kind of exist in this in-between space between stressed and de-stressed. And then between the emphasis and deliberate speech, I have, you know, like two more registers as an example. A textbook register, which is, you know, some children, when they are reading from a textbook, they just stress every word, and it's a very steady beat, like one syllable after another syllable. And then the news speech, which is, you know, they tend to be more deliberate with the way they pronounce all their tones, but some words are not stressed. Some common words are not stressed, and they don't have as steady of a pace as, you know, that textbook chant sort of prosody. For most people, where you want to be is in that casual range, when you're, you know, just speaking in a conversational sort of tone. And there you want to be de-stressing most of the words and emphasizing two types of words. I would say substantial words and words you want to emphasize. So I'll go into both of those. Okay, so first we have morphemes with emphasis. How do you treat these? By morphemes with emphasis, I mean like any part of the word that you would italicize. That's what I mean. And I could also say words with emphasis, but in Mandarin, a lot of words have two morphemes. And a morpheme usually corresponds with a character. So in this example, 汽车, right? You probably know that means car, like an automobile, something you put gas in and it, you know, it drives. So you could emphasize the qì part or the chē part or the whole thing. So let's say you want to emphasize, in the first case, the whole word, and you want to say it's cars that I'm looking at, or it's cars, not trees. It's the cars, like you're emphasizing that. You're putting italics on it, for instance. You could emphasize both syllables and say 汽车是汽车, or you could just emphasize the last one. You could say 汽车 and not really emphasize the fourth tone of the qì part. So for the whole word, you could do 汽车, it's cars, not trees. 是汽车, 不是树. Or you could say 是汽车, 不是树. And both ways would be acceptable and would convey that same sort of meaning. But that only works for a word where in the word level stress, you would stress both syllables. So if in the word level stress, you would only stress the first syllable, for instance, then you would not have both ways. You would just stress, the first syllable. You could also stress just one morpheme. So if you wanted to stress the last one, for instance, you want to emphasize that it's 汽车 and not 气球. It's a car, not a balloon. Both things are related to gas. 汽车不是气球. You would, just stress that last part. And then you could also stress the first morpheme. So 是汽车, like it's not 自行车, or it's not 火车. It's not a bike. It's not a fire car, which is a train. 是汽车, like it's an automobile, right? It's the gas car, like that type of car, not another type. 汽车, 车. So that 车, you're not stressing that as much, but the 气, you are stressing it because that's the particular morpheme that you want to emphasize. So the takeaway here is you can stress a whole word, or if it has more than one syllable, you can also stress like one part or the other part. You can always stress any morpheme, basically, except for those with fifth tone. You can't really do that. All right, so here's an example of sentence level stress in general, and I'm just using single syllable words right here, one syllable words. If you were to read every tone fully and stress everything, it would sound like this. 饭是我做的. 饭是我做的. But nobody really speaks like that. It sounds very awkward to say it. So I would recommend that you say one of these based on context. 饭是我做的. 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 And then for the de, you can't really stress that since it's a fifth tone word. The food or the meal or the cooked rice. I'll just say the food. Is something that I made, was made by me, right? So if you wanted to stress the 饭, that would mean like I didn't make something else. I didn't make, for instance, 菜. I made the cooked rice, not the dish that it goes with. 饭是我做的. Like it's not 菜, it's 饭是我做的. And then 饭是我做的. When you stress that 是, out of everything, then you're saying it is something that I made. Yes, I did cook the rice. 饭是, it is the thing that I made. Like I do take responsibility for making the rice instead of not having done that, right? 饭是我做的. Like yes, I did. And then 饭是我做的. 我做的. Third tone there, so you're stressing the fact that you're the one who did the cooking of the rice or the meal, the food. 饭是我做的. It is 饭是我做的. That means that you made it, like you cooked it in that sense. You didn't buy it. 不是买的, 是做的. 饭是我做的. If you do that to a sentence, just find the most important word or words that you want to focus on instead of stressing everything. That will drastically improve how natural you sound when speaking Chinese. Okay, so now let's look at substantial words. These are verbs, nouns, adjectives, and adverbs, and generally you just want to stress all of them if you want to sound deliberate, that is. And if you don't want to sound deliberate, then you would stress some of them and leave out the most common ones. So there's no hard and fast rule for substantial words. Generally, if it's a 2-syllable word and it's a verb, noun, adjective, or an adverb, you want to stress that usually. But for some common words, you don't have to stress them because they're so common, like 是, 去, 有 for verbs. And then, for example, let's take adverbs. Let's say 快, 已经, 还, 就, 才. Of course, you could stress anything. You could emphasize anything. For instance, let's take the last one, 才. 才 is used to imply that you're doing something very late and you're surprised about how late someone did something. For instance, 你才起床啊? 你才起床, you just got out of bed. So you could emphasize it, if you really want to emphasize that meaning of you're surprised about how late someone did something. But in many cases, you wouldn't stress it because it's such a common word. It's sort of flexible, but generally, you want to stress the words, at least those that you haven't seen before, that are these main substantial parts of speech. So I think what would be more helpful is if we just jump directly into the examples, and you'll see a little bit of what I mean. All right, so we have some basic sentences here. So I'm going to read all of them and go through why I would stress certain words and not other words. All right. 我们好久没去旅游了. So this one, we haven't traveled in so long. So the 好 is the so part, or a good amount of time, 我们好久, in such a long time, right? 没去旅游了. We haven't traveled. It's a substantial word, 旅游. You see, it hasn't been mentioned before. It's a verb. It's 2 syllables. So if you want to be kind of deliberate, I would stress that. But you don't have to. So you could also say 我们好久没去旅游了. So that sort of assumes that, they already know, or the conversation is in an area where it's not foreign to introduce the subject of traveling. In that case, you don't have to stress it. But if it's a new topic or new subject that you're bringing up, and that word is related to that subject, and it's the first time bringing it up, and it's a substantial word, then it makes more sense to stress it, even if you're just being casual and not that deliberate. 我们好久没去旅游了. It sounds like you're suggesting, you're bringing to the table the fact that it's time to talk about traveling. So it has that sort of prompting sort of tone. But you don't have to do that. And then 好久, that's something that you'll often want to stress. Such a long time, just due to the meaning of that word. You're emphasizing it's such a long time, a good number of years or whatever. 今年秋天我们去日本玩吧. 今年秋天我们去日本玩吧. So this year in the fall, this fall, let's go to Japan to play. Not really to play, but just to visit for leisure, I suppose. it's a common way to say it, like 我们去 somewhere varba implies that you're, going there as a trip for an excursion, a visit, for leisure. So notice here the 我们, that's a pronoun that doesn't get stressed. And in the previous sentence, I also didn't stress 我们. Pronouns don't really get stressed that much. 没去 in the first sentence, they're also like very common words. Here, 今年秋天, you want to stress these usually because it's a time, and a time is usually like specific information that's important to like making plans, right? So usually you would want to stress that. This fall, 今年秋天, and you don't want to say 今年秋天 because then you'd be stressing everything. And if you look at the word level stress for 今年 and 秋天, you don't really want to stress the 年 or the 天. Like you could, but it just sounds a bit more newsy or like textbooky. And then 去, 我们去日本玩吧. 去, this one is a common verb, so I wouldn't stress that. 日本, so 日本means Japan, and it's something new that you're suggesting, right? And it's a noun, it's a proper noun. You're bringing it up for the first time, and it has 2 syllables, so you want to stress that. If you look at the word level stress, the bit is not stressed. So 日本, and then var, so it's van, but I say it with like a R sound at the end, var. That's kind of part of the verb 去哪儿玩, but like that's like a set sort of expression. Like usually if you have a verb and there's like 2 parts to it, just the main part, like 去, you want to emphasize that if you're even going to emphasize it. And here I wasn't even emphasizing that, so the var certainly would not be stressed. Okay, the next pair of sentences. 你做完作业了吗? 你做完作业了吗? So it means have you like finished doing your homework? So 你, the pronoun, is not stressed. And then there's 2 ways you could stress the verb and object pair. You could stress the verb 你做完作业了吗? Or you could, in the second sentence, stress the object 你做完作业了吗? And actually if you stress the object, that's more of a default way of asking it. Just like, did you finish your homework? Like you're generally just curious about that fact. And then the first way, where you're stressing the verb 你做完作业了吗? Sort of implies that you've already talked about this before, or like you have knowledge that they're supposed to say yes, like that's the answer you want, or it implies sort of a after all, in the end, did you end up finishing your homework, that sort of vibe. And then the van, that's part of the verb. So 做完, the van is a complement for 做. So like I said, if a verb has like multiple parts to it, you want to stress the main thing, if you're even going to stress it at all. 做完作业, I wouldn't say 你做完作业了吗? In that case, you could also say that, but it just sounds like you're trying to emphasize the van part as opposed to another complement. So did you finish doing your homework? So you could also do that, but it implies more of a specific emphasis. All right, this one. 我已经跟你说过好几次了. All right, so again with the 好, that one I want to stress because of what it means, like so many times, a good number of times, like you're emphasizing how much something is. So you want to stress that pretty much always whenever you want to use that construction. 我,你, so the pronouns, again, not stressed. 已经, it is a 2-syllable adverb, but it's so common. It means already, which is a very common adverb, so you don't need to stress that. And then 跟 here, it's just the preposition that you use when you're saying like I already told you this, but you use a you have to use a preposition here. I already like have talked with you, I suppose, about this so many times. So the preposition doesn't get stressed. And then 说过, 说 is pretty common. Like if you want to be deliberate, you can stress it, but you don't really have to. The 过 is a grammatical particle, which usually you don't stress that. 好几次了. 几次, they're, pretty common words. 几, you could analyze that as as a measure word, and those aren't really stressed. And then 次, in one analysis, you could also consider that a measure word, or you could consider that a noun. But it's pretty common, and actually if you stress something, like if you want to emphasize like 好, words around that tend to not get emphasized as much because you already have something that's emphasized there, and if you emphasize too many things, you'll end up sounding like newsy or robotic or awkward. So 我已经跟你说过好几次了. Alright, so now we're gonna read an actual informational text, so an actual paragraph of some stuff that I found on the internet. It's from the website Mayot, which it could be a good tool for learning Chinese, I think. But anyway, this is about Mother's Day and like flowers. 今天是母亲节，是一个表达对母亲养育之恩感谢之情的国际节日。母亲们在这一天会收到礼物，康乃馨被视为献给母亲的花，而中国的母亲花是忘忧草。Okay, so in this example, if you actually go online and like find the recording for this on the website, the speaker there actually tends to read it with a bit more stress than is natural, because that's how instructional materials work. It's sort of a mix between colloquial and like textbook speech. So it's in this in-between spot where some parts sound more natural and some parts they're just emphasizing like the tone a lot more than you actually would. So the way I read it is more of a natural way to do it. And of course, this is not the only solution. Like you could for sure say it several other ways. But I think this is one of the most natural ways to stress it. So let's start with 今天 at the beginning. Today is Mother's Day. So I know I had said before that 天 gets de-stressed. Here, it actually sounds better if you stress it. And that could be because if you said the alternative, which is de-stressing the 天, 今天是母亲节, or 今天是母亲节, it sounds like you're trying to emphasize, like actively emphasize the fact that it's today is Mother's Day. And the reason you would come off that way is because 母亲节, Mother's Day, is something that sounds like it should be emphasized more. So if you emphasize the 今天, the 今 stands out a bit too much, and it sort of sounds like you're saying today is Mother's Day as opposed to another day. Whereas what you really want to emphasize is that, well, you don't really want to emphasize anything actually, but you do want to introduce the new information that it is Mother's Day today. So 今天是母亲节，是一个表达对母亲养育之恩感谢之情的国际节日。Okay, so it's an international holiday for expressing one's like gratitude and thanks towards the mother's upbringing and the feeling of thanks to her. So here, 表达, actually you don't have to stress this one. I would say if you want to be more deliberate, you would stress it. And I would lean towards stressing it because you don't want to go like too long without having anything stressed. Otherwise you end up sounding monotonous. 是一个表达对母亲 So you could also say 是一个表达对母亲是一个表达对母亲 or you could say 是一个表达对母亲 So you could emphasize it or not. If you want to be more deliberate, emphasize it. Especially considering that it's informational text. Like you wouldn't be casually saying this to someone. You'd be like reading it off of the page or something. 养育之恩感谢之情 Okay, so here 养育 and 感谢 these are new words that you're introducing, so you do want to emphasize these. But in the word level stress, you don't emphasize the second syllable. And then whenever you have like a 4-syllable sort of noun like 养育之恩感谢之情, like the last 3 sort of get de-stressed. But you could also stress everything. You could say 养育之恩感谢之情, and that's more of a deliberate way of saying it. Now the next sentence, 母亲们在这一天会收到礼物. You don't have to stress the 母亲 part, the 母 part, but 礼物, because it's the object. You generally want to stress that, because in general, the object is like the default thing you want to stress. And then 在这一天, I emphasize that because on this day, mothers will receive presents. I want to emphasize that. So that's more of an emphasis sort of thing. 康乃馨, so carnation, that's a new thing that I'm introducing. 被视为献给母亲的花. So since I'm stressing the 母 part, it's something that you give mothers. Like that's the purpose of the flower. The other things, 被视为献给 something. Even though you're introducing like new information, it might be substantial and more deliberate speech. You don't have to emphasize it because, like I said before, if you have something that's already emphasized, things around it, you don't have to stress it that much. Otherwise, you risk sounding too robotic. 而中国的母亲花, so 母亲花, it is substantial. It's a noun, but in the previous clause, I had already said 母亲的花, so it's something that I'm repeating. And plus, I'm stressing the fact that in China, the Mother's Day flower, the flower for mothers, is 忘忧草, and that is some new information, so I'm also going to stress that. 忘忧草. And I think that's a daylily. Alright, so my storage is about to run out, but these examples right here, I just want to let you look at what what I've marked as like stressed and unstressed. Just in case you don't know, the black is stressed, red is unstressed, and then the green is 5th tone, so like it's a neutral syllable, it can't be stressed anyway.
赵峰，你让妈妈把那个剩的那个土豆沙拉拿出来，从冰箱里，中午咱把它吃了。
In another video, I'll actually go over like pretty much word for word why I'm stressing one thing and not the other. And then same with this one. And these are actual clips that I took from WeChat. These are audio messages that my parents recorded. So it's a real example of conversational colloquial Mandarin for you.
听到星期一下午到星期三都有 storm Austin， 然后还有可能有 flood， 因为降水比较多。你注意点安全，还可能有雹子，就是尽量别出去，而且出去的时候你还得小心，有些桥底下或什么低洼的地方，这车开进去有可能就走不了了，或者陷在里头。不是以前有过这样的学生什么的，中国留学生来这样被淹死的嘛，所以要小心啊。
And then this one as well, and I do want to talk about in that video how we treat foreign words. Generally, like if it's 2 syllables, you want to stress the first syllable as a first tone, and then the second syllable is a 5th tone. So like Wiley, Murphy, Pfizer, like that. But there are some specific details with like more syllables and like 1 syllable words. So I will talk about that in another video.
你爸是上星期五打的，我是昨天打的第一针，在Wiley 还是 Murphy 这两个可能交界的地方，他那地图上给的说不清楚到底在哪儿。然后呢，这个我们都打的是 Pfizer。
And in yet another video, I will go over auxiliary words. So a bunch of all these, a bunch of grammatical, like, parts of speech and how we treat those. So yeah, this is more of a general overview. You want to get out of this that it's pretty flexible, and a lot of what you stress depends on like how deliberate you want to be, and also like whether the word is common or if it's a pronoun, or if there's other words that are already stressed or emphasized around it, or if it's new information, or if it's a verb, noun, adjective, or adverb, or if it's something that you want to emphasize, just because semantically, like you want to stress some meaning, so you can stress either a word or a morpheme in that case. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. If you found value in this video, then please leave a like. And if you subscribe, then you will stay updated, because I will be making a part 2 and part 3 of this series. So yeah, have a great day. Bye.